Hello there and welcome. I'm Rene Grosdanovski, and I'll be taking you on a journey through some of the biggest digital questions in the asset-intensive industries today. Each episode will focus on a different topic, and each week I'll have some interesting guests providing expert and real-life insight into the topic at hand. The aim is to unpack each topic and discuss in detail what they mean for you and your organization, regardless of where you are in your journey. Let me just remind you to also join our LinkedIn group. To stay up to date and continue the dialogue, we want to hear from you. You will receive an invite for this right after this episode. And with what is fast becoming the new normal amongst the COVID-19 outbreak, we're going to be doing all this in a brave new virtual world, which I'm sure will present some interesting dynamics and challenges as we go through this today. But just like in so many other ways, it is showing us all how businesses are adapting to these new working environments and challenges, and thus challenging us all to think outside the box. And of course, in a true agile fashion, we are learning as we go. So this being episode 1, we could consider this MVP. So your feedback, your questions and your comments are all very welcome so that we can continue to improve as we deliver the rest of the series. Also, don't forget to engage with our polls below. This allows us to ensure we can align future episodes and content around what really matters to you. All right, well, let's get going. The term mobile has been around for all of us for many years across various industries, not just asset intensive. We all know the world is becoming ever more interconnected, from wearables to IoT, from social to virtual reality. So how do we use these multiple emerging technologies to combine them to support ever more complex use cases and business scenarios? Good question, I know. In this episode, we're going to explore the topic of intelligent interfaces and how we can use them to improve workforce performance. Intelligent interfaces? What does that even mean? When I first heard that, I was puzzled. How is it different from what we've been referring to as mobile for years? And how do we use it to optimize our workforce? The Wall Street Journal has the called a far-fetched becoming reality. But how much of it is really far-fetched in this day and age? Most of us use our cell phones as an extension to us and the link to the social web, which gives rise to the terms like phone and social media addiction, with most of us confessing to checking our phone just before we go to sleep and checking it again just as we wake up. So what considerations do we as employers need to be giving when we're introducing new reliances on technologies? And of course, COVID-19. What impact does it have, not only on how we adopt technologies, but maybe more importantly, how does it change in how we provide service to our customers, and with it change the need for mobile technologies to support these? Well, luckily, I have a couple of experts here today who I know are eager to explain to us what some of these mean and how not only the wider industries are approaching these challenges, but also how one of our customers is going about their journey right now. With me here today, I have Richard Jackson, Asset Information and System Manager at Massey University, and my colleague Roy Lorenzen, Solutions Manager at Certus Digital. Richard, Roy, a little bit about you guys.
Richard, you want to go, Roy?
You're being polite.
I'm being polite. I was holding back. So look, I've been at Massey University for 12 and a half years now, and a lot of that has been to do with assets and the whole Maximo software system. So we recently went on a journey with Roy and Certus around some mobile change development, shall we say. I'm quite happy to be here today, and thanks for having me along.
Thanks, Richard. Roy?
As Rene said, I'm a solution manager here at Certus, where for the last 12 years, I've been focusing on enabling mobility for our customers. To begin with, there was very little choice about how AI customers could go mobile, but today we're almost spoilt for choice, and my role has evolved into helping identify the best technology for the processes. Back to you, Rene.
Before we get started, let me remind all the live viewers out there that this is an interactive session with Q&A. So to the right of the stream, you'll find a panel where you can ask any questions throughout the session. So please feel free to engage with us, and I will aim to elicit the answers to the questions from our experts. Well, with that, I'd like to hand over to Roy to give us all an overview on intelligent interfaces and what he sees the major trends and approaches people are taking.
Thanks, Rene. As already mentioned in the intro today, we're interacting with technology more than ever. Along with the traditional keyboards and touchscreens, we're now seeing voice commands, gestures, and image recognition joining the ever-growing ways that we interact. As humans, we're interacting more, but so are our assets. And this is all leading us down a path to intelligent interfaces. So what is an intelligent interface? Rene asked the question before. Well, for me, the definition that explains it best is an intelligent interface is one that allows a seamless, natural interaction between humans, machines, and data. Within that, the key words are seamless, natural interaction. Just for one moment, picture yourself at a dinner party. Your partner, across the table, raises an eyebrow, ever so slightly. The gesture is so subtle that nobody else even notices, but you receive the message loud and clear. On board, can we leave yet? Most people recognize this kind of intuitive communication as a shared language that develops over time among people in relationships. We accept it, it's perfectly natural, but only between humans, right? It seems a bit far-fetched that machines might also be able to recognize the intent behind a subtle raised eyebrow, let alone respond to it in a contextually appropriate way. While that all might sound and feel a bit futuristic, it is the vision of an intelligent interface. There are emerging technologies that could redraw or even erase the boundaries between humans and computers. A new breed, if you like, of intelligent interfaces, turning that far-fetched thing into reality. These interfaces are actually sophisticated arrays of data gathering, processing capabilities that provide a powerful and alternative to the traditional modes of a human-computer interaction, providing a real-time, context-aware, automated feedback loop between the assets, machines, the humans, and, of course, the data. Reality is, a lot of what we're seeing here is in the real world now, particularly in the retail space, but increasingly more in the asset-centric world. For example, using cameras, sensors, a computer vision, a retailer can track and analyze shoppers' store movements, gazes, and behavior to identify regular customers and gauge their mood. By cross-analyzing the information with these customers, their purchase histories, the retailer can actually push promotions in real time to the shopper's mobile device. Or, in the not too distant future, be able to predict the need based on the customer's subconscious behavior and preemptively place an order on their behalf. Scary, right? But imagine this in an AI world. If we look at it from a health and safety perspective, imagine being able to warn field users of any hazards, verify that they have the correct PPE on to do the job, and also monitor their vitals. That last piece I think is pretty cool. Imagine being able to understand when a guy out in the field has an elevated heart rate, or they're feeling like they're under stress. How many incidents could we prevent by having that information? From an efficiency perspective, being able to provide the field user with the instructions to complete the task, or the ability to talk to an expert when they come across a difficult problem. Of course, we can't talk about intelligent assets without mentioning the word IoT. IoT is the hub for intelligent assets, and while it's not particularly new, we've had sensors and assets for a while now. SCADA systems feel like they've been around for donkey's years. We're now starting to ask the questions around, what do we do with all that data? How do we use it? Imagine this scenario. One of my assets has the ability to recognize when a particular component is failing. It alerts the maintenance system, which then can predict the date and time when it's due to fail. It places an order for a replacement part, generates a work order, and schedules the technician to do the job before the predicted failure date. The schedule is then adjusted to allow time for the component to be replaced and the part needed for the job arrives the day before. So it is ready to be fitted to the technician when he performs his repair. All of that happening without any human interaction. Because when we talk about intelligent interfaces, it's not just about something pretty to look at. This is an example of an intelligent interface between an asset and the maintenance system. The connected digital world, which these days is a reality. While this kind of process doesn't eliminate failures altogether, it puts us in a place where we can minimize the impact of failure and ultimately allow us to maximize our operational efficiencies. All this is based on the data that's available and also the technologies. This is what's driving our intelligent interfaces. Whether it's provided to us on a mobile device, desktop or laptop computer, using AR and VR, all of those are just enablers for us doing things differently. In the AI space, we're always looking to optimize asset performance, gain of operational efficiencies, both for assets and for our field workforce, but also help our asset engineers move us up the path of the maintenance curve. The question is, how do we do all of this and enable those change to intelligent interfaces into our business? Just for a moment, think about some of these benefits. Imagine being able to do preliminary investigations before having to send someone out to the asset, getting those early alerts to prevent the potential failures. If we come back to that definition of an intelligent interface, we have the humans, we have the machines, the assets, and we have the data, and it's growing. We have the ability to get more. So the key to create an intelligent interface then comes back to some first principles. Who is our target user and what is their role? Or is it potentially an asset that we're wanting to look after? What is the information that they need? And how do we want them to be able to interact? Where do they do it? Are they in the field? Are they at a desk? Do they have connectivity? What other environmental factors are we looking at? It then becomes a case of taking what we have, understanding what that is, and mixing it with the right technologies to generate an intelligent interface. My final thought is, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, how much is an interactive picture worth? Over to you, Rene.
I don't know for me. What I'm most impressed is I was not aware that my wife and I had an intelligent interface for all those years. Neither did I know that I was actually so well trained to respond to a certain signal. So there you go. Richard, listening to Roy's presentation, what is your take on this from a client who's actively going through their journey right now?
Look, mate, there were some parts of that that looked really good. It's a really cool presentation there, Roy, and just gets me thinking. Look, I think the big takeaway there is just making that data available to people in the field. So we're all sitting on lots of data sources. Unfortunately, some of those data sources are spreadsheets or bits of paper, you know. So this whole process allows us to pull from different sources and push that out to that worker. And those data sources can be kind of real time, you know. So it's all quite exciting. You mentioned SCADA systems there, which I think is a really good point. You know, we've had data coming in for sensors for a long time, but more operational. So, you know, I've got the ability to turn a pump on and see that there's a flow rate, but it'd be kind of cool to expand on that as well. You know, grow to sensors for pump vibration and things like that. So to put sensors in for maintenance purposes, you know, it's a slightly different way of thinking, but I can see how that could feed in and be quite useful to workers.
Absolutely. I just thought I'll take a moment again to remind our virtual viewers, this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions or comments to Roy's presentation, feel free to feed them through. And as soon as the moment arises, I'll take a chance to ask them. Again, this is an MVP session, so do please engage with the polls because we are obviously trying to adjust what we do here and make it better as we go through the series. I do want to thank Richard and Roy for their insights and thoughts on this. But just like some of our online viewers probably have questions, I also have a number of questions left. And hopefully I'm going to use this next segment to allow us to unpack some of those. And obviously, like any good show, I've given it a label. It's called the panel discussion. And so we're going to do that next. So a question for Roy here. Roy, we covered off many different technologies, but which of these do you see being adopted first and why?
Yeah, certainly. Building off what Richard just said there in his comments, taking that data and getting it out to the guys in the field. So certainly the ability for them to be able to see real life data or near real time data, be able to interact and update that data, and also then have it feed back into the back end system. So that's typically what we're starting to see at the moment. A lot of those processes are typically defined as well, so you're able to measure that against the previous way of being able to do it, whether that be paper based or not, and be able to see sort of an instant business benefit.
Richard, your take on it?
Yeah, I was going to expand on that myself. The paper way, I mean, there's aspects of the current business that I'm in that are still paper based, and the biggest thing you notice is that sort of lack of flexibility. So if I've got hazards on a location or a particular asset, for example, in a paper based world, I can let you know about what we knew at the time that work order was printed, for example. The move to go to digital in real time from a health and safety perspective is really, really quite interesting. I'm quite excited about those opportunities that will come from that.
That's a very valid point. While I got you, Richard, how ready are you to take advantage of these technologies? When we look at these, there are a number of them that require connectivity. So essentially being offline with online capability. How are you looking to meet these challenges?
Look, hey, that's a really good. I think we at the time that we designed our process, we were keen that it would be full-time, real-time. When we actually got into it and broke it down, there were certain aspects that didn't need to be real-time. So we've got Wi-Fi on quite a lot of our campus, which is quite good. We've got the 3 campuses and quite a lot of Wi-Fi. It tends to be sort of more public areas. So where our workers go behind the scenes, possibly into plant rooms or down into tunnels, we don't necessarily have the coverage. So it's kind of twofold. It's one of we will push to get that Wi-Fi coverage. The cell phone coverage and the 5G technology, of course, is coming, and that's got, the penetration from those is growing as well. But yeah, and then of course on top of that, we're also making that call about, do we need aspects to be real time or not? So our processes at the moment is our worker will sync in the morning where they've got very good quality Wi-Fi, and then they'll periodically sync throughout the day. So there's less of a dependency on real time, but it's something that we are growing.
You raise a very valid point in your answer there, and that is, I guess one of the things that you're doing is you're challenging the requirement for that offline capability, and and the real-time requirement for the data, which so often we see people will say that yes, it must be real time and it must be online and it must. But really, it seems like you're using this as an opportunity to unpack some of those givens.
Yeah, we certainly started out like that. And I think you'll find there's quite a lot of customers will go down that road. They'll turn around and say, yes, we certainly need it. In practice, we ran into some areas that they didn't have very good coverage, and that caused some issues. So the end user experience, it's another component that you can add towards that as well.
Yes, of course. Roy, I guess anything you want to add to here from Mass University, a facility customer, do have some unique opportunities and challenges when it comes to their coverage. How about some of our other clients?
Yeah, certainly. The ability to be offline is probably one of our biggest requirements. Not just because they need it because of the coverage reasons. I mean, 5G hopefully will get rolled out across the country at some point in time, and it will have more coverage in terms of that way. But just the questions around, do you actually need to be online? What does that data need to be perfectly updated? There's always scenarios where you do need it to be online, and certainly being able to meet those challenges in some parts of New Zealand and Australia as well is also a challenge. But also it's about kind of being able to look after the battery on the devices as well, especially if you're out in the field. Those people who use their phones a lot certainly know that when they're sat there playing Crazy Crunch or Angry Birds or whatever it is for hours on end, their battery drains very, very quickly. So, I mean, the same is for applications that we provide as well. While they're being used, they tend to drain the battery, particularly if you're always trying to hit the server to get the latest updates. So it is one of those cases of looking at of the who, what, when, why, and how scenarios, and just kind of matching it to that.
Thank you. And again, for me, the big takeaway was about challenging, I think, those perceived givens, and really unpacking the value behind it. So thank you for that. Roy, I've got a question for you here. I guess when looking at an intelligent interface, one of the key drivers is safety. You covered it off in your presentation. But safety is through various means, such as alerting people of potential hazards, monitoring vitals, environmental variables, were all examples you gave. What other benefits do you see in terms of health and safety through the adoption of these technologies?
Yeah, and I think Richard touched on it as well. As information is power, really. Being able to provide information, whether or not it's about them in particular or the environment that they're actually in, just about being able to provide that information is one of the key benefits to being able to kind of adopt that sort of technology. When you start to add things in like wearables and stuff like that, it really does expand on the capability that you've got to be able to provide that information to the user and enable them to be able to make decisions based on that. You really can't. I don't think there is any point where you can't have too much information, particularly when it comes to safety.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And it's obviously information and context, which seems to be the key differentiating factor when it comes to intelligent interfaces. Richard, obviously, you touched on it as Roy suggested. I guess, how do you see your roadmap? I guess driving the improvements in this area.
Yeah, look, you've kind of got me thinking there, Roy. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that you could take that with. We should talk later, but yeah, look, I'm quite excited about the concept of being able to record data. So if someone is sent out to do a job, potentially I've got access to some of that data that was going on at that stage. So the maximum temperature or pressure in the room at the time it was done, concentrations of gases. If they're wearing some sensors and those wearable things you were talking about, there's no reason why that can't be passed back to the work order and be stored as a particular meter or that sort of record. So when we look back, we were able to say, hey, look, the person did the work, and we alerted them to hazards that we knew about. But also here's some of those environmental factors that were present at the time. I mean, it's quite exciting, that audit process on there. It's quite cool, and it's something I hadn't thought about. Yeah.
Great. I didn't know it was going to turn into a workshop, but yeah, great.
There we go.
Looks like some sparks are flying. Yeah, and again, we talked about having data in context, and I guess just through your answers, I think what became apparent very quickly is there is a myriad of opportunity in terms of using not just the individual data elements, but the interplay of those data elements and what it means from an environmental perspective, especially when it comes to the environment that the person is operating or working in. I guess I want to change tack here for a second. I guess, and Richard, I'll ask you this question because you may be probably more directly affected right now from this. And that is, I guess, no session in this day and age could be complete without this question. What impact do you see COVID having on this on the prioritization uptake of these technologies?
Look, I mean, you're quite right to raise it. You can't have, I mean, the fact that we're having a virtual session now, it's changing the way people work. You can't get away from that. A lot of businesses are going to be impacted in terms of their money, the income coming in. So there's going to be those development conversations around the projects that they do proceed with. I hadn't really thought of it until I heard some of those aspects of the presentation from Roy, but exactly what I talked about. If we can track where people were at what time, those types of the cross references, the mapping of who had contact with who, these are new aspects that are coming to be. That certainly wasn't a particularly large requirement before, but to know who worked on this job and who was assisting, those types of things. Previously, we've raised work orders to say there's a job that needs doing, and we've sent people out, and we haven't really been too worried about who did it. But the current environment lends itself to that type of tracking as well. So maybe there's some opportunities there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, the question is, I guess, very, very right now, and so I guess any answer was going to be based. I guess it's always going to be based that way. We've been speaking about disruption and digital disruption for many years, and I guess I personally can't think of a bigger disruptor ever in terms of, again, here I am at home, meeting virtually with all of you, which would normally be, we would have probably caught 2 plane rides and sat in a common place. And so it really is just changing everything that we know and take for granted. Thank you for that, Richard. I do have one more for you, and I guess this is definitely one directly for you, and that's, what advice would you give anyone starting on their intelligent interface journey? What lessons have you learned, and what would you recommend for them to focus on, or maybe more importantly, to avoid?
The humorous part of me says, don't do it. But no. Look, if I think back about what helped, what didn't help for our particular journey, and I'm going to just make it clear that it's still ongoing, so we've developed one particular app for a purpose, and we're moving on to another one, and there's more in the works beyond that. I think you really need to understand your current processes. There's this vibe that going mobile is going to save everything, and it's going to be the be all and end all, and you just buy it off the shelf. I think if I look at my cell phones here, that the idea of going onto the app store and just grabbing an app for that is kind of ingrained. But the bottom line is our companies all have different processes. And so you really need to work out what's working well with those processes and what's a bit of a pain point. And start with that real understanding of my current processes and grow from there. You sort of work out how mobile can assist with it and the different directions it can take. I shall leave it at that.
That's a very good summary. I think, as you say, everyone's different, but yet everyone kind of embarks on the same journey for somewhat the same desired outcomes, even though the way they go about it is different. We actually got a question came through from our online Q&A, so I'll pose it. I guess I'm not too sure who would like to take this one. Maybe Richard, maybe Roy. The question was I would imagine, in relation to the COVID-19 question or an extension of that. And it's asking social distancing and its impact on field operations. What are we expecting this will do to the way we execute work? And maybe more importantly, in the context of today's conversation, what will technology have to do to support or allow us to operate in that way?
Mind if I grab this one, Roy?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just got a couple of ideas on that actually come out of today. I liked what you were saying around having sensors for maintenance purposes, because I think one of the big things that should be asked now is, do I need to send a person to this? And if you could get a bit of a heads up to say, look, I think I know what the problem is, we can minimize the actual people time on site. So I was quite excited about that. The other one is, frankly, we don't know the answer to that yet. And I think right across the organizations, everybody's scrambling to work out what that's going to mean moving forward. So.
Absolutely. So maybe we'll do a follow-up in episode 8, and you get to tell us, how you tackle the challenge, or maybe the problem has gone away by then and we won't have to answer that question. Thank you. I'm just going to give a moment here to see if there's any other last sort of Q&A thoughts. There's one more. Look at that. The question is around, there has been a trend being suggested around the use of drones and I guess aerial technology to reduce the requirement for, or to support the requirement for more social distancing, as in it will require less people to be out there to do things, and using technology to do aerial surveillance, visual inspections, and so on. Roy, maybe this one's a good one for you. I guess visual inspections, whether by drone or LiDAR and vegetation control and so on, isn't really new. I guess maybe first we answer that part to it, but also, like, again, in the context of today's world, what do you see in terms of our clients and what they're going to be doing?
Yeah, certainly. The biggest impact that the social distancing is going to have is on where we've got to work in crews or groups of people. The fact that you wouldn't be able to get within a meter kind of, I guess, would rule out a lot of jobs, particularly if you think about if you're in some sort of plant room or something like that. There typically isn't the space to be able to kind of do that. So when it comes to being able to do visual inspections, either using augmented reality or virtual, or some sort of virtual reality device, whether it be, or drones or things like that, those sorts of things are certainly going to start to come into play in terms of how we're able to do that. So it might be a case of going out, using a drone to do an aerial inspection of a building or a tower or a wind turbine, something like that, and then that data being sent back to somebody who's sitting in an office and being able to actually interact with that and perhaps have communication with the person who's actually on site with the drone themselves. So I certainly think that the technology side of things, being able to kind of see the same thing, perhaps on different screens, is certainly going to come into play in terms of how we adapt, I guess, to this new world.
That's a valid point. So things like virtual assistant, or I guess virtual maintenance assistant, in terms of not being able to rely on the more senior individual to be right next to you. All those technologies, I guess, that are supporting a more remote use case, I guess, would be favored or would be prioritized over others potentially. Is that what you're saying?
Potentially, yeah. Certainly, just being able to have a different way and perhaps a smarter way of being able to work, not necessarily the sort of just, I've always sent 3 guys to do this job, so I'm going to send 3 guys to do this job, when in reality you kind of need a guy on the tools and perhaps a guy being able to from a different location be able to give him some advice or tell him what he needs to kind of do.
Interesting enough, I guess what that does in many ways is it's challenging, again, the same givens. We spoke about them before around the connectivity element, but you just raised another point, right? And, we always used to send the 3-guy crew out there. When was the last time we asked ourselves the question that it need to be a 3-guy crew anymore, given a lot of things would have changed since that decision was made. So again, I guess, disruption. I guess I want to take a moment to thank you both, Richard and Roy, for making the time today to discuss this topic with me. It helped me, and hopefully it helped you understand what it means, not just for us and our organization, but also for our people, and how we can use these new emerging technologies to change the way work is performed in the field, making the work hopefully more accurate, more reliable, but most importantly, hopefully safer. I want to remind you all, not forget, episode 2 is scheduled for the 7th of May and is titled Moving Up the Asset Maturity Curve. I do hope to see you all there. That's all we've got time for today. We are very interested in hearing from you, so please let us know your feedback. As like I said, this was MVP, so the more feedback you give us and the more in terms of poll input you provide, the better we can make this for you. Thank you, and hope I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.